Hello, I'm Jonathan Ashworth, former Labour politician, now a podcaster. But throughout my time in Parliament, I always championed the cause of children of alcoholics. I know how healing it can be to find a fellow thread of fellow feeling. I know how painful it can be to feel alone. And through these conversations, I want to shine a light on experiences too often kept in the shadows. Welcome to COA Lives for me, Jonathan Ashworth, the Children of Alcoholics podcast. And my guest this week is Camilla Tominey. She is the Associate Editor of the Daily Telegraph. She presents her own show on GB News, the Camilla Tominey Show. Me and Camilla are good friends, even though we are politically very, very different. But we are friends because Camilla, like myself, is the child of an alcoholic and is a passionate advocate and campaigner for this cause. And I'm delighted to be with her here on the podcast today.
Thank you.
Welcome,
this is
Camilla.
Weird. Why aren't I interviewing you?
Well, you have interviewed me so many times, and you, even though we are mates, you're always so mean to me.
I am not mean to you because you're very good at handling the media round. You were Mr. Media Round during the last general election. So we know we can bowl a few googlies at you and you will be batting like Boycott in his prime. So stop.
Well,
honestly.
I have to say, the interviews that you do, Camilla, are always the toughest. I would come out of, like, I don't know, with BBC and having done Laura Koonsberg or Trevor Phillips or whoever, and if they're listening to this, you're very good interviewers as well. I am not remotely criticising you. You're both excellent interviewers, but you'd come out and you do it down the line, which is where I have to speak at a camera because
Awful, really.
because the studio, the BBC studio, is near Oxford Circus.
Yes.
Your studio is up near Westminster, so you just can't get to you in time. So you have to do it down the line with an earpiece in. And my trick was always, if I didn't know the answer to your question, I'd just be like, "Sorry, I didn't quite get that, Camilla.
You did used to do that a lot. Sorry, I can't quite hear you." I was like, you can't give me an answer. Also, you say we're not politically alike, but we do believe in the same fundamental things, I think.
Yeah, we do.
We come out at it with different solutions.
Yeah.
I think we both believe in helping people. I'm very much give them the means to catch fish. I think Labour a bit more throw some fish at them. But that's not for a debate today.
That's not what the Labour Party and the Labour government are all about.
No.
Not at all. I just want working class people to be given the opportunities that so many other people
I agree with
are
that.
given.
I do agree with
have
that.
been given naturally in life. But we're not here to talk about politics. But if people do want to listen to politics, they can listen to you on your political podcast.
They can. They might not be aligned with me if they're more aligned with you on the podcast because it's quite righty.
Yeah.
But that's all right. Keep your friends close, your enemies closer.
What's your political podcast called?
It's called The Daily Tea, and it's the
Daily Tea.
Telegraph's daily flagship podcast. So from one podcast to another.
Well, I also have a politics podcast, Politics
you?
Inside Out, with me and Gloria Di Piero, a fellow
of course you
GB
do.
News presenter.
We love Gloria. Do we think there may be a few too many podcasts in circulation?
No, there are. No.
Not this one's the most important.
No, podcast of the future.
Okay, fine.
Anyway. But this is not a political podcast.
No.
This is a podcast about children of alcoholics. And that's why we're talking today, because that's how we got to know each other, although I knew you because you're a journalist. But we really got to know each other through this cause, because this is a cause that you are passionate about. This is a cause which not only are you passionate about, you also do write about it, you talk about it, you use the platform that you have as one of the country's most experienced and senior journalists to advocate on behalf of children of alcoholics. And that's because this, like it is for me, is very personal for you, isn't it?
Yes.
And I'm used to telling my stories and you're used to asking me questions. So this is my chance to ask you a few questions. Why don't we just kick off then? Why is it personal for you?
Well, my mum, Lynn, was an alcoholic, and that sort of, to a certain extent, blighted my childhood and that of my older brothers, Ben and Matt. And so I think what happened when I heard of Nacoa, I was wandering around the House of Commons doing something or other, and I saw Liam Byrne, your former colleague, the Labour MP, and he was with Kim Woodburn of Kim and Aggie cleaning fame. I sort of thought journalistically, what the hell is Kim Woodburn, sadly recently departed actually, doing in the Houses of Parliament? And then she was going to a Nacoa event And Liam said he was going. And I thought, well, hang on, this applies to me. I'm the child of an alcoholic, so I'm going to go along. And then we went to that event and people spoke in a very like-minded way. And I was listening to people going, oh, I've been through this. Like, I felt a degree of solidarity because it wasn't really something that we openly discussed as children or even as adults. And then at the time I was on the Sunday Express, and some of the stories that were being told about children, there was a particular story that one of the counsellors at Nacoa told about how people manning the helpline had to read bedtime stories to some of the children calling in because their parents, plural, were too drunk to tuck them in at night. And I sort of reflected on that thinking, God, I mean, it was pretty awful to have mum being an alcoholic, but if it wasn't for my dad, what would have become of us? You know, we did have the parents sort of rescuing the situation so many times. And then I thought, God, imagine having both parents being alcoholics and no salvation parentally at all. And that just made me think, actually, I was quite lucky, really. I mean, this is the other thing. It's sort of coming here and thinking, God, should I be talking about all this again? How many times do I need to talk about this? And then I've got my dad ringing in my ear because I do some work for This Morning on ITV, and at one point years ago, Holly and Phil, who were then presenting it, were like, oh, can you come in and talk about being the child of an alcoholic? And I ummed and ahed about it. And then my dad said, well, if your mother had died of cancer and they'd asked you to speak about that, you'd have spoken about it quite openly. What's the difference? And then I sort of thought it is important for us to discuss this. This isn't, by the way, about sort of telling our sorry tales in a bid for some kind of sympathy. It's not really about that. I like to talk about it because I like to receive messages from people saying, replicating what I felt in that meeting. And what I felt in that meeting was, I'm not alone. I'm not the only one that's gone through this. I'm not the only one coming to terms with all this, not just as a child, but as an adult and as a parent myself, and grappling with different questions, grappling with the legacy of parental alcoholism. I mean, you're basically dealing with that for the rest of your life. So I found a kinship with people. And then I thought, well, I'm also going to talk about it because I want somebody else to feel as I felt going into that meeting.
I think that is so true. We're not doing this for the indulgence of people. It's because we know by speaking out, we are comforting people. People know that there are others in arguably positions of influence who have got their back and are trying to improve the support available. But just tell us a little bit about your childhood then.
Yes.
At what point did you realise that your mum had a drink problem, and how did that impact you and your, was it two brothers you said?
Yeah, so my two older brothers and me, and then Dad, you know, quite well-to-do middle-class existence. My dad was the good local GP.
Yeah.
My mum was a stay-at-home mum, very glamorous, gregarious, very attractive woman. Sort of like, if I think back and think of her now, I kind of see her in the guise of sort of Dallas and Dynasty, like 80s mum.
The big shoulder pads,
yeah,
the big hair.
Lots of like hair in rollers, full makeup. I remember once she came onto the school bus. I used to take the school bus home from school, and I can't remember what happened. I think they'd been in London at some event, and they'd clearly driven past the school and thought, we'll get Camilla off the bus and just take her home ourselves. And I remember my mum sort of wafting onto the bus, and all of these girls went, she was wearing this long royal blue coat. I remember this moment vividly. And I was like, yeah, that's my mum. They were like, wow, who's this woman? So she was an extraordinary woman. That's the other reason that makes this quite difficult, because I don't like people to kind of package her as just an alcoholic. She was so much more than that. She was a really extraordinary woman who unfortunately had what turned out to be a fatal flaw in being so in the grip of addiction she couldn't get out of it. So how did that materialise? We noticed as children that she would change personality in the evenings, and we couldn't quite get our heads around what was going on. And for quite a period I thought it was like the menopause, or was there something hormonally going on that she was changed? I mean, it was a bit Jekyll and Hyde, as many people will identify, living with an alcoholic. And then I remember I went through a period of thinking it might be drink related and like marking bottles in the fridge Then I remember my dad coming down and saying, "What are you doing?" And I made up some nonsense about doing something for an experiment at school. And like, I knew she was a smoker and a drinker, and we would all sit with her to watch Neighbours. We're the same age, so you'll know the routine, right? Come back from school.
Yeah.
Get some homework done. Neighbours came on at what, 5? The repeat of Neighbours.
I think it was about 5:35. I think.
5:30. You think? So you were
Yeah, it was about 5:35 because it was Grange. It'll be
Yes, Grange Hill.
Grange Hill or Blue Peter for news round. Grange Hill or Blue Peter or Biker Grove in the later years.
Yes, indeed.
And then Neighbours and then the 6 o'clock news.
So she'd be sitting in her chair, like smoking a fag, having a gin and tonic. You can tell when you look at a drink that it's got alcohol in it, right? It kind of swirls around, and gin and tonic is slightly weirdly iridescent, so you can tell. And like, she would be fine then, but by the time it got to like 7 or 8, she might start behaving weirdly. Me and the boys had this phrase, like mum's in a mood. We used to call it mum's in a mood. She had this way of adjusting her glasses on her face in an exaggerated way. And literally behind mum's back, my brothers would go like, and roll their eyes. She wasn't quite the same woman. She struggled in the mornings. Like, there was this ritual where me and the boys had to take her like a pint of squash in the mornings, which I didn't realise as a kid was because she was dehydrated. And just stuff kind of like, some nights would be completely functional and fine, and some nights she'd just disappear, or the dinner wasn't finished. And my dad was a doctor on call, right? He was working really long hours, putting in a right shift. And or like, we'd get to Sunday and the boys would go, I haven't got any school uniform. I'd be like, oh my God. So I was doing quite a lot of domestic stuff as well. And I remember saying,
even though you're the youngest.
Yeah, but I was the only girl, and, sorry, but that's the way classic. Also, it's a bit of I know now that I'm a bit of a clean freak and a tidy freak, because it was the only way I could exercise some control over my domestic situation, was like try and maintain order in chaos. So I would like do uniforms. And I even remember saying to my girls at school, do you do quite a lot of the washing? They were like, no, of course we don't. We're 10. I was like, oh, right, okay. You're just used to what you're used to.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're about 10 at this time.
So I think she has Ben in 74, Matt in 76, me in 78, quite full on. I subsequently kind of went on a bit of a voyage of discovery, because when I had my own children, I was like, what has gone on? What's gone wrong here? Why has she had these kids and not been able to cope? Not in a judgmental way, just has she been completely overwhelmed by motherhood and just turned to drink? And I think it was a combination of factors. She had the kids really in quick succession. Dad was working a lot. She was always a bit of a rebel child, daughter of 2 teacher parents. Was getting into quite a few scrapes and things. Yeah. And she was hugely gregarious and attractive, so was quite head-turning. Loved a laugh, loved a party, loved to be the life and soul of the party. You can recognise all this, probably in your own dad, And then it moved into something, more problematic. I think there's sort of social drinking and gregariousness eventually turned into, we're dropped off at school and she's drinking in the morning.
In the morning.
And then you wouldn't know what you were coming home to. Well, first of all, is she going to turn up to collect us? Then, is she going to be turning up sober to collect us? Quite a few hair-raising journeys home. And then,
I remember I've experienced some of that.
And then you're like, what do I do about this? Well, I've got to get home, so I'm going to get in the car.
Yeah.
And then, oh, she's not here. Okay, walk home. And then what are we going to get when we open the door? It's just tricky.
And as you become a teenager and you begin to understand this a bit more, do you ever confront her? Do you talk to her? Do you talk to your dad? I mean, your dad's a GP.
Yeah. So
he must be able to see what's going on.
But I think, Dad had been trying to give her so much support. And I then, again, subsequently found out that he had sent her to various psychiatrists to try and work out what the problem was.
Yeah.
And then things do come to, so there's a couple of, it's hard to remember all this now. You sort of have the, since she died, I just like to preserve that memory of her on the coach and other moments. I don't really.
It's a lovely moment, that
well,
is.
Why wouldn't you?
Beautiful vision, I'm sure
yes,
it was.
This vision of Mum. Then I think back and I think, well, there was a period where we confronted her, or Dad confronted her over the drinking, and she went into rehab somewhere in Northamptonshire. Then she came out thinking she could still drink spritzers. I was thinking, this doesn't seem right. I remember going up to visit her in this facility. She was really secretive about it. And I remember, like, in a childish way, putting a lot of stock by, if 3 cars pass me by the time we get to the service station, she'll be cured. Do you know what I mean? You have these, like, ideals in your head. And then when I got there, I thought, no, not really addressing this. Dad said subsequently that the medical professionals he spoke to throughout the whole period of their marriage said that she could never accept she had a problem, that she was sort of beyond help. We tried. Then everything came to a head in this family holiday. We all went to South Africa. We were staying in Plettenberg Bay in the most amazing hotel. It was just, the scenery couldn't have been more perfect for kind of like a family holiday ideal. And she wouldn't leave the room.
How old were you at this point?
God, I think about 13-ish or something. 13,
and that must feel
14.
mortifying when you're that age. It's such an important age for a girl, a teenage girl.
She
all
was
the
just kind of
hormones,
like
changes, and you're dealing with this in a parent.
She was kind of like at home with the minibar, and my dad was trying to make the best of a really bad situation. At that point, their marriage is on a knife edge. We're all sitting downstairs in this living room playing Monopoly or something, because Dad's just trying to make sure me and the boys are okay. And I turned around and said, Mum's an alcoholic, isn't she, Dad? And then it all suddenly became something we could discuss. But I can't really remember the order of all this. That must have happened before the rehab. I can't remember.
But what a brave and actually very mature thing to say as a 13-year-old girl.
Well, it was like, what is... I think me and the boys were like, what is going on here? Like, it's so dysfunctional, but you know what you're like in a family. You're so protective of your own unit.
Of course.
And I wasn't going to start telling girls at school or teachers, like, God forbid, that my respectable middle-class mother has got a drink problem, like the good doctor's wife. Like, that would have been so humiliating for her. But then presumably people could see it. Like, afterwards, lots of people said, yeah, well, we know.
We're born in the same year, so we both grew up in the 80s and the 90s. So many of those cultural references we share and we get, but we are from a different economic background.
Yeah.
So, my mum and dad are people who worked in pubs and casinos in Manchester. That's a background of understanding, of nightlife, of heavy drinking, and so on. Whereas you have got, like, from the outside, the picture perfect life.
Yes.
The local GP in a nice leafy village or a suburb, respectable, what everybody sort of aspires.
Harpenden, Hertfordshire, detached house.
Yeah, there must have been quite a lot of social pressure on to keep up appearances.
Yes, I think so. This was the other thing about Nacoa. I sort of thought sometimes people are labouring alcoholics like they're tramps, drinking out of paper bags.
Yeah.
I was like...
Winos on the street, that sort of thing.
Winos. I was like, I've made this point before, like, Mum was hiding empty bottles in Chanel handbags. So it wasn't the paper bag.
It's so Joan Collins.
It is a bit. I mean, to be fair, the lady had a lot of class, so fair enough. But it was like, it wasn't flagged. We're not the family that was going to be flagged to social services. Yeah. Nobody, and that's not for me to play the kind of like world's smallest violin, but what struck me about meeting the people I met at Nacoa and just generally discussing it is this can affect anybody. Your dad working casinos, my mum, the kind of middle class, the epitome of middle class affluence. Black, white, we've met people from all walks of life, haven't we, who are affected by this. So that's the other thing. Let's not make generalizations about who this can affect any child, any family on earth.
And the marriage breaks down.
Yeah. The marriage breaks down after that South African trip and rehab that doesn't work. Dad's tried his best. Good Catholic, tries to keep the marriage together, but enough's enough. My brothers then go and live with Dad, and I think that out of daughterly loyalty, I must go with Mum.
God, that must be so much pressure for you to absorb on your own.
Well, it was so hard because I was so close and am so close to my brothers. Yeah. People used to take the mickey, like when I went to university, that most of my sentences would start with, my brothers. But being in that situation, Are you an only child?
I'm an only
yeah,
child.
okay. So being in that situation with siblings, like so many nights, if she was in a mood, I'd go and say to my brother Matt, you know, who's closest in age, can I come and sleep in your room? You know, because she would come in and like sit at the end of the bed and keep you awake and tricky. So we kind of protected each other, and I desperately wanted to be with my dad and my brothers, but I was the only daughter. I was worried about her, and I sort of thought, well, and I didn't blame them at all. I got it. But I was like, well, who's going to look after her? And then I felt that that was my responsibility. And my dad did not want me to do that, but understood that I needed to do what I thought was best and then come to my own conclusions.
And she did die, didn't she, relatively in her 50s?
Yeah, so I think I end up moving in with her, and I move in with her like a couple of years before my GCSEs. Do my GCSEs, things get more and more difficult. By this point, my dad's remarried to my stepmother, and they're all four of them are trying, so my brothers, my dad and Bernice are trying to encourage me to leave because it's getting dicey and difficult and dangerous. Drink driving. Then had a physical fight with her because she sort of got frustrated with me about something and took a swipe at me, and then I took a swipe at her, and I thought, hang on a minute, this is ridiculous. She's actually quite vulnerable, and if I'm not careful, I'm going to lose my patience. And then in the middle of my A-levels, things just came to a head, and I thought, I'm gonna struggle here to get the marks I want to get. Like, I wanted to do well.
Yeah.
I was also conscious, I think, that I didn't want to turn into her. She would have been better off working, going to university, maybe not being a stay-at-home mum. I thought, I've got to get a really good career. I suppose there's this fear of turning into your parent, isn't there?
So when you're going through this, particularly when you're doing GCSEs and A-levels, and by that point, you'll be 17 or so, 18, you'll be developing your own identity, your own sense of style, your own views and opinions of the world. You must have at that point had conversations with her. Did you ever say to her, what did she say?
Well, we went to Dublin, and I restricted the alcohol she could drink because I said, we're going to go on this trip and I don't want you ruining it. Then she collapsed in the street because I had restricted the alcohol she was drinking. If you withdraw alcohol from an alcoholic, they can collapse.
Did she recognise she had a problem?
Well, we're in the hospital in Dublin and not getting very much sympathy because all the doctors could tell what was going on. So and then she discharged herself.
So you're hoping you're having a lovely holiday.
Yeah,
with your
and then it just
Dublin.
all goes horribly wrong on Grafton Street. Yeah. We go to Egypt again. Oh my God. Just horrific.
Does she ever apologise to you?
No, she doesn't really see it, really. Also, at the time, do you remember another cultural reference? Absolutely Fabulous is the show of the decade.
Yes.
And I'm basically Safi and she's Adina, yet none of it's funny.
Yeah.
And by the way, I loved Ab Fab and I loved Joanna Lumley and Jennifer Saunders. But I'm looking at Safi thinking, well, it's all very well that this is a joke for everyone. I'm literally that daughter. I'm mothering my mother, trying to get ahead in life and get grades. No one knows what's going on. There's no help we're not in that environment of let's all talk about our feelings at school.
She must get very ill at some point.
Yeah, so she's ill a lot. She's ill, she's bruising, falling about, getting bruised, losing weight, not really eating, not maintaining the home very well. Relations break down. By that point, her dad, my lovely granddad, has moved in with us because... Anyway, to cut a long story short, we get to the middle of my A-levels and I think, right, enough's enough. I've done my best. I can't cope with this any longer.
Yeah.
And if I do, I'm going to really cock up my A-levels and I don't want to do that. I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to go to university and do well. And so I said, I love you, but I can't do this anymore. So I'm going to leave. And then I went and moved in with my dad and my brothers and my stepmother, which was a hugely positive thing to do. I did well in my A-levels. I opened them with my stepmother, not with my mum. I'm still maintaining a relationship with her. The boys aren't. And then I go to uni, and uni's pretty miserable because I just got back with my brothers and my dad, and then I have to go off to Leeds. In retrospect, I should have taken a year out, but that's by the by. I'm at university. She's phoning a lot. She's declining in health. I'm coming back, trying to see her. Not much is getting done at the house. It's all a bit worrying, but what can I do? She's an adult. She can't be helped. She won't help herself. I'm trying to help her. Nothing works. She can't see it. I'm banging my head against a brick wall. And then she has a number of serious incidents, health incidents. I go travelling. She has this major bleed, ends up in Addenbrooke's in Cambridge, nearly dies, is told if you ever drink again, you're going to die. Comes out, carries on drinking, ends up dying in 2001. So I've come back from travelling. I've started my first job in journalism at the Hemel Hempstead Gazette. I don't even know if she was conscious of that, really. I'm not even sure if she was conscious that I became a journalist. And then in 2001, July 2001, she passes away at the age of 54.
54.
Yeah.
Can you remember the last conversation you had with her?
Yes.
What did you say?
Because it was quite nice. I, at that point, had been reunited with my now husband, Dominic, who had gone to school with my older brothers. It's a long story cut short, but basically, I knew him from when I was a child. He played in a band with my eldest brother, Ben. He ends up going to Leeds University 4 years ahead of me. We have mutual friends that reintroduce us and we hit it off. And that is the July of 2001. I go into the hospital. Obviously, I'm seeing her regularly in hospital. She is not with it at all because if you're that chronically affected by alcohol, your liver's gone, you can't process the toxins, they go to your brain and you basically go mad. Get something called encephalopathy. So she isn't making much sense, but I go in the hospital and the last conversation I have with her to make conversation with somebody who can't really make conversation is I have reconnected with Dom, who you'll remember. I'm like telling her this, Mum, do you remember Dom? Ben's friend. And I'm going to go on a date with him. And she turns in a moment of lucidity out of nothing and says, he was always a nice boy. Like makes this remark. I said, all right, well, I'll come back after I've gone on the date and tell you about it. And then she dies. She dies between the meeting and the first date. And then I go on to marry him.
Well, at least she said
I
something
know.
lovely and you've got
yes,
that to hold on
exactly,
to.
exactly.
But what an extraordinary set of experiences you must have gone through
Yeah.
with her. And then, but you are incredibly successful. You go to Leeds University, you do incredibly well. You become
followed in Keir Starmer's footsteps.
Keir Starmer's,
my friend Keir.
In Keir Starmer's footsteps, a person you look up to and
Law
a
degree.
great supporter of.
Indeed. Never became the DPP. I don't know if he's mentioned him, but he is the former Director of Public Prosecutions.
And he's the son of a toolmaker, I'm told.
Apparently so.
You then get involved in journalism. Now, we're the same age. When I first got involved in Westminster around this time, 2000, 2001, doing different political jobs. Jobs involved speaking to journalists, briefing journalists. That was one of the roles I have had over the years. Then those were days, I mean, it still is to a certain extent, but my word, those days were boozy in Westminster. Really boozy. I mean, people would go for lunches for hours on end, 3-4 bottles of wine.
Days on end.
People would be in the bars of Westminster until the early hours of the morning. I mean, it felt like the whole of politics kind of, was floating on a sea of alcohol.
Yes.
A river of alcohol.
Sauvignon Blanc.
And there's still a bit of that, but it's not like what it was in the 2000s.
It was ridiculous in the 2000s.
And how are you coping in that environment?
Not great.
Right.
Well, to be fair, no, very professional. It's always very professional. But I was on a Sunday paper as well, so I left the Gazette, joined the Sunday Express, and you're kind of like news gathering all week, and then you actually have to get your arse into gear on a Friday and Saturday and start writing stuff up. But
So just for listeners,
quite a lot of leverage.
This sort of news gathering involves taking politicians for lunches and drinks and gossiping with them,
Not just
basically.
politicians. Also, don't forget, I was doing the Royals as well.
Oh my word! So you're doing?
So it was like hanging around in Mayfair and other places, trying to get good stuff. Always been quite sociable. So yeah, I would say, because I'm in my 20s then, Mum's died, I'm trying to come to terms with that, did slightly go off the rails and drink too much.
You did?
Yeah.
Could you see your mum and yourself?
Yeah. Terrible. Can't handle booze at all.
Right.
So a few close shaves. Coming home in an ambulance once was probably a low.
Really?
Yes.
You drank that much?
Yeah, I fell over and smashed my face in. It's quite embarrassing, actually. It's why I've got this lump on my nose.
What, on a sort of night out in Soho or something?
No, out in Putney, funny enough.
Putney?
Drinking rosé. I mean, just insane. But as I've always said, if you've got a problem with drink, then you've got a drink problem. So I've never been an alcoholic. I certainly have never craved alcohol in the morning. You know, these maniacs that go to airports and have a pint at 9 a.m. Nothing like that, but just not very good at handling booze. And then, so basically I did go through that whole thing. I mean, everybody in their 20s drinks a lot anyway, if they're a drinker, right? And it was the period of establishing yourself. And it's a good way to get stories, is to get people drunk and get drunk with them. And then there's camaraderie and all the rest of it. But I did get to the point where I had my children. So I got married in 2005, had my eldest in 2008, and pretty swiftly decided that once I became a mother, I didn't want to drink again.
So you don't drink now?
I sometimes drink. I had a huge period of total abstinence. Then my beloved stepmother, who ended up being my mother for longer than my mum was my mum, if that makes sense, Jonathan. She passed away last November. And I kind of like had this brief return to drinking, probably because I didn't have my Bernice in my ear condemning the decision. And then I just thought, I don't know if I need this in my life. So I might have the odd Christmas or summer holiday tipple, but that's it.
Yeah.
It's not, me and drink don't agree on many different levels.
But this podcast and Nacoa, we're not judgmental about people who drink.
I don't care if people drink. Just don't make me drink. Don't put me in a dentist chair. It's my request.
Look, I mean, I drink, but the point is we want to get support and help for people for whom it is a problem.
Yes.
I mean, I've never advocated banning drink, and I'm not moralistic about it. I do have a drink and so on, but
No,
people
I'm
who
not
struggle need the
moralistic
support.
either. Like, my husband drinks, all my friends drink. They want to get drunk. I mean, I'm 100% more productive if I don't drink. And not drinking has been the secret to my career success, I would suggest. It's good to actually get people drunk, have them tell you stories, and then you be the only person in the room that remembers them.
Well, I mean, you're a very good journalist. That's your trick as a journalist, get all these politicians and people hanging around Buckingham Palace drunk.
Something like that. But also we're all drinking less and being much more healthy and having protein-filled lunches rather than, Prosecco. And it's funny, isn't it? Because we tried to make a calculation, like when you came out and spoke about your dad and you're in the House of Commons quite famously, and then we spoke to Liam and then we spoke to the other people involved in Nacoa, and it was like, it does seem that politicians and journalists might be over, in the sort of stakes of who has got an alcoholic parent. Alcoholic parents do seem to breed quite driven people. Like you would think, I mean, clearly your life can go completely off the rails if your parent is an alcoholic. Yeah. But did you actively try to avoid the pitfalls of your father?
I think it made me incredibly driven. For me, as a child, I threw myself into, I mean, I went for a period of 13, 14 drinking. But once I sort of got through that, when it, particularly as I got to A-level stage, I was so driven.
Yeah.
I was so driven. I decided, it makes me sound like a total nerd, I decided I wanted to be a politician at that point.
Yes.
I was so driven that I wanted to do well in my A-levels, go to university, work in politics, and I became absolutely laser-like focused. But
was that because you were like, I don't want to work in a casino?
I think the struggles of it, I think the challenges of it, I wanted to escape my home life. I wanted to escape Manchester. I wanted to make something of myself. My dad especially, my mum also, but my dad especially was bright. He was clever. The reason he did well in the casinos, because he could add up quickly. If somebody's winning at roulette or winning at blackjack, he could quickly add up the winnings. And that's where he did well. And he got offered all these opportunities. He got offered opportunities to go and work in Las Vegas and Florida, to go and work on ships. I used to say to him, go and see the world.
Why didn't he?
Drink. He'd rather just come home and get drunk at home.
Yeah, like the safety net of just an evening consuming alcohol behind closed doors.
And I decided I didn't want to miss out on opportunities for me, just because for whatever reason I got the political bug. And I focused on it and I was successful.
Yeah.
I became we know what they are. We call them special advisors. They're the sort of aides to the biggest, most senior politicians. I got a job working for Gordon Brown when I was 25.
Yes.
I mean, I didn't think anything of it at the time, but looking back, that's incredibly young.
You didn't advise him to sell that gold,
I
did
didn't.
you?
Nothing to do with the gold. However, there are reasonable economic arguments for that. Well, let's not go into that now.
No, let's not mention the global financial crash.
And then I became an MP at 31, and until very particular circumstances happened around Gaza in my constituency,
Yes.
I would have been a cabinet minister. But anyway.
It'd be good if you were a cabinet minister still.
But
do we think that we are driven... Because somebody once observed, a very close friend said, I think you might have spent the rest of your life trying not to turn into your mother. And that's not quite right. I want to emulate the best of her, like anybody. You want, the Philip Larkin thing, they F you up, your mum and dad. But don't we, particularly when we become parents, try and take what we loved about our parents and dispense with what wasn't so great? So my kind of like career-minded teetotalism is clearly the complete opposite. Using my brain, having a job, being a better mum because I work, in my mind, than if I'd stayed at home and got bored. I mean, was mum drinking because she was bored, unhappy, both? Probably. So we do go about life. But the other thing is, politics and journalism, they are very chaotic lives, really. It's like, oh my God, I don't know what's going to be thrown at me from one minute to the next. You're plunged onto the airwaves, being questioned like by somebody like me, anything can happen, grenades going off. Journalism, yesterday I was covering Southport. Today I've been doing Gaza and Palestine. Again, you have to be like willing to just react to the unexpected and be spontaneous. And I thrive in that environment because that's how I grew up. Nothing really phases me anymore because if you've basically had to paper over the cracks of your parent being totally pissed out of their head in public and you're having to manage that situation, frankly, being thrown on live TV, being told, unfortunately, Queen Elizabeth II's died and you need to write 600 words for the front, or Boris Johnson's downstairs, can you interview him? It doesn't, by comparison, seem that difficult.
I think that is such a well-observed point. So I became known as the sort of, the person, the Minister for the Day programme type politician for Labour, the person who would always be out constantly in the TV studios for Labour. And politicians and the listeners might not realise this, and you might not quite realise it as an interviewer. There's a lot of politicians who are terrified of that.
Yeah.
It strikes fear in them.
Yeah.
If they're coming on your show or they're going on, Sky News tomorrow or whatever, so some politicians, they will spend hours, sometimes days, in total anxiety about it.
Yes.
And thinking they need to know everything about absolutely everything because they're so terrified. Whereas I will just go out and do it and just be myself and try and be myself in my relaxed way. And
How much worse could it get?
Exactly. And I think it's exactly this point that you're making. It's exactly the same thing. It doesn't faze me either because I just think, it can't be any worse than some of the things that have happened to me in life.
But then you have to be quite careful as well, because I remember going through a period like at university where mum was obviously dying and I'm trying to get a law degree completed, and I've got what I felt were the piffling concerns of my peers complaining about a load of old bollocks. And I remember thinking, what the hell have you got to complain about? And then I thought, no, hang on, be careful. And actually an ex-boyfriend at the time said, look, it's all relative, Camilla. For you, your biggest problem is that your mother is, could at any point just like keel over. And for that girl, her biggest problem is she can't get the coat that she wants from the local shop or whatever. So you have to be careful that you don't completely lack empathy. On the converse of that, and we talked about our political sort of divide, I do think the world is divided between people who really do understand some of the adversity that people face. And I'm not saying, but I can really identify with the subjects of my stories on a deeper level than others. And I hope I have been fair. I don't know, because you have to deal with so much, both in secret and public. I remain, probably because of this study, I had to do this study of what it is to be human. Who is this mother of mine? What is going on in her head? Why is she? It made me sort of endlessly fascinated and curious about people and life and the decisions they make, which I did think drove the journalism as well. Politics is very similar. Like, what are my constituents going through, and how can I help them? Or don't you think it kind of gives you a unique insight into, compared to people who live this sort of charmed life where nothing goes wrong for them?
I mean, absolutely. It does give you an empathy and an understanding of the struggles that people face. I also do wonder, though, and I sometimes have asked myself this, particularly now I'm not an MP, and I think about the impact it had on my own family. I do sometimes ask myself whether this issue around addiction is genetic. And although I didn't have an addiction to alcohol like my dad, have I just replaced that with an addiction to the political world? Because politics and journalism associated with politics is so high adrenaline, it's so high impact. Things happen at such pace and speed. And I do think it's addictive.
You've made me think now, do we, because of the highs and lows of life and how we were on this roller coaster with our alcoholic parents, would we find life quite dull if we weren't placed in another sort of theme park? Westminster, Fleet Street, whatever you want to call it. Also, I totally agree that I have a predisposition to being a workaholic. I mean, I really love work, so I'm happy about that. But I work ridiculously too much. Having said that, weirdly, I am much more present for my children than my mum ever was, because she was drunk for a lot of the time. So I'm like, okay, I'm working, sometimes I'm back late, but if I'm with you, I am present, I am consistent. I say to them, have I ever missed anything? Have I ever missed anything, Kian? My God, I have been at sports days with laptops. I've been at the back of assemblies. I think I've done like secret radio interviews from a teacher's bloody stationery cupboard, whatever. I've not missed anything. They have known from the beginning to the end of the day that they know where they stand with me. I just wanted to be a consistent parent that they could always rely on. And I have achieved that. I'm not perfect. Jesus, I'm not the perfect mother. You can do another podcast with the kids. But I have done a much better job, God rest her soul, than mum. And I wouldn't change mum for the world. I would not change any of this. I'm so glad I had the mum I had. I loved her. I love her now. I think about her every day. But in that respect, I'm proud of myself because I'm a career woman, but I've been a better mum because of it.
I think that's a wonderful story, and you should be proud of yourself. I'm sure your children are proud of you, and I just want to finish by saying let's just have in our mind's eye once more that picture, that vision of your mum in that royal blue with the shoulder pads, looking like Joan Collins, or
a little glow around her. Like Linda Evans on Dynasty seemed to glow a little bit. Slightly. Is it ready bread? I don't know what it is. I think
the Dynasty glow.
I think it's rose-tinted spectacles, but look, that's how I want to remember her, so I will.
It's a wonderful vision. Camilla Tominey, thank you very much.
Thank you.